Hello everybody and welcome to another How to Win video in our Arkham Horror How to Win series. Today we're going to be talking about understanding investigator roles and team composition. When you're just starting out, you might not know what makes a team good. Well, luckily with this video, we are going to tell you what you should be looking for, what the roles you should be filling if you want to fill certain roles, and then ultimately, as the name of the series says, how to win Arkham Horror. So let's talk about first what needs to be done in a game of Arkham Horror. Obviously, each scenario has their own objectives, but if we strip that all down and go with just the very basics, what needs to be done is defeating enemies when they show up and gaining clues. Everything else is ultimately secondary. If there's an enemy on your space, that enemy becomes priority number one. If you have no clues and you need to advance the objective, you're going to want to gain those clues so you're actually winning the game. If you're not doing those things, you're going to fall behind. Travis, I'm going to pass the ball to you to explain this idea of investigators worth of clues and damage return, because that's a great baseline for you to understand what the value you bring to each act is.
Yeah, so many parts of this game scale in terms of how many investigators are in the game, where lots of objectives will require you to have 2 clues per investigator, and a lot of the boss monsters in particular will require you to have or to do an X investigators worth of damage. In addition to that, the monsters also kind of scale in that the more players that you have in the game, the more mythos cards you're going to be drawing, so you're going to be drawing more monsters. So those monsters need to be dealt with more efficiently. You could probably break it down mathematically to figure out like what the odds of drawing a given a monster in a given scenario are, and then figure out like how many monsters you need to be able to defeat on average to kind of, if you're really into that, but I'm not.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's not important. We're not saying you need to like go that deep, but just understanding that these are the metrics you want to be aiming to hit.
But yeah, so if you have 3 people in your game, in theory, each investigator needs to be able to defeat 1 investigator's worth of monsters and be able to to acquire 1 investigator's worth of clues. And it's fine if you can't, but someone else needs to pick up that slack. Mm-hmm. You could have 2 people or 1 person who can deal with 2 monsters or 2 players worth of monsters, and another person who can consistently get 2 people's worth of clues, and a third person who can do kind of half and half. But yeah, those numbers still need to be met.
Yeah, and if you've watched other, like for example, when we play on our channel, what generally happens is Bryn is usually in charge of monsters, Travis is usually in charge of clues, and I'm usually the flex spot. But let's actually talk about the investigator roles as we're talking about it here, because this is where we can get a bit more specific with it. So we're going to break all of these down even further, but the 4 investigator roles that we kind of view for the game is the enemy specialist. So your role is you need to defeat enemies and monsters when they show up. That is your priority number 1, and if you're not doing it, that's not good. The clue specialist, your role is to gain clues. If you're not doing it, you're not going to pass the objective, because your enemy specialist is going to be like, I've killed all my enemies, why aren't you gaining all your clues? So your role, straightforward, you need to gain clues. The generalist, this role helps where they're needed. You're here to, as Travis was just saying, kind of just pick up the slack where it's needed. You're going to help kill monsters as they appear. You're going to gain some clues now and then. You're kind of like not focused on any one thing, and by its nature, you're not great at any one thing. You're kind of just there doing what you can when you need to do it. The last one is the support. This role helps other investigators do better while also still contributing damage and clues. I would just say to separate it from generalist, they're not as good as filling the gap. They can still fill the gap, but their job is also more about making it so that the other roles can really strive in what they're doing. Is there anything you guys wanted to add to this before we moved on?
I think that's pretty good.
Cool.
Yeah, I think you covered it good.
Sweet. So let's break them all down individually, as well as some examples of investigators, starting with the enemy specialist. So, Bryn, this is the one that you usually play, so I'll pass this one to you.
Yeah, well, it's a lot more fun when a cultist shows up to just, get to knife him than it is to sit there and be like, guys, I need help. That's just how I feel about it. Anyway, what we're there to do is we're there to defeat the enemies that are drawn either by us, ideally by us, but possibly by our team. If you are playing with 3 or 4 players, you usually have to deal with maybe 2, maybe 3 players worth of monsters on a bad turn. Sometimes this means just like, you kill one of them and you grab another one and you're like, hey, you're on your own for this third one though, because like I have nothing left. I've spent all my actions. Sometimes it means asking your friends if they trust you, because you're going to need the action to deal with another monster that's also on your space.
Yeah. What Bryn means by trust is not engaging the monster that your clue specialist may be holding before you try to kill it, and that's what we refer to in our group as trust.
Yeah. It's a very reactive role. Some turns you get to spend sitting there doing nothing, and some turns you're like, well, I need 7 actions to do what I need to do this turn, and I have 3. Because it is entirely based on what comes out of the deck.
Yeah. And once again, like, if your job is just to be the enemy specialist, you're going to want to make sure you can do your job. Because if you can't kill, like, a 2 health minion or a 3 health minion with 3 actions, that's not good. That's bad, right?
Yeah. You're probably going to want to be playing 6, I guess, like 3 different tools to allow you to deal extra damage, at least. Whether that be like, you're playing Mark and you're playing 2 machetes and you're playing 2 45s and you're playing 2 of some other type of weapon. But you're gonna want that because it's what you do. And dealing 2 damage with an action is worth almost 2 actions.
Yeah.
So really helps out.
So
yeah, this same idea is why playing specialists is like generally preferable. The higher you get in player count, is because the more monsters are, the more efficiently you can deal with them. And when you're not splitting your resources between multiple things in your deck, so if you're playing 50% cards that get you clues, 50% cards that kill monsters, and you have 2 players or 3 players or whatever, sometimes you're just going to draw the wrong half of your deck, and maybe you'll end up with not enough ways to kill monsters. Whereas if you have one person build their deck exclusively to deal with monsters, then you always have someone who can deal with monsters, and have someone who can exclusively get clues, you're always going to be able to consistently get the clues you need.
Definitely. The examples here, Mark Harris, we're not going to go into details of like why they're so good at like focusing on these things, because ultimately, like, other like investigators like Agnes Baker, for example, she could flex into a generalist kind of role, but she's also very good at dealing out damage because of her ability and her access to mystic spells. You know that Mark and Tony both have 5 in their fist, which is what they're going to be fighting with. Agnes has a 5 in her brain, which is what she's going to be fighting with. It makes it so that like if you get a weapon that gives you +2, you're already up 3 on the majority of enemies you're going to be fighting. So it just further helps you ensuring that you're going to be hitting enemies when it comes to it. All right, Travis, I'll pass this one to you.
Okay. Well, clue specialists need to get clues. This one is a little bit different from the monster specialist in that when monsters show up, well, like Brent mentioned, you're going to have turns where you're kind of like, don't have anything to do because, things just kind of worked out that you didn't draw any monsters, or you only drew like random ghoul and you can axe them down with one action or whatever.
Yeah, the clue specialist is always on.
Yeah, you're always getting your clues. But getting clues isn't as urgent as dealing with monsters is. If a big scary monster shows up, it needs to get dealt with, or like someone's going to take a bunch of damage. If you ignore it for long enough, it's going to kill someone. But those clues, they're always kind of just going to sit there. Not going to do anything bad to you, probably. You can kind of get them at your own pace, but you still need to get them. And this one is like the one that very obviously directly scales with the number of players in the game, where most of the locations in the game don't have a set number of clues in them. They have a certain number of clues per investigator on them. And it's your job to be getting those.
Yeah. Like, you should, like, in a 3-player game, you should have a plan in your deck as the clue specialist to gain the 6 clues off your location that just spawned in one turn. Like, that should be something that, like, you don't need to do it, like, every time you get to a location, but you should, like, be prepared for such a thing. You see this, an untabooed Rex Murphy, it's just written on his card, right? So, like, that's an easy plan.
Yeah, he just has it.
He just gets to do it.
But, like, that's kind of like your goal. You're here to clean out locations as fast as possible. So, like, you're not a failure as a clue specialist if you can't get more than investigator clues per turn, but you should be able to in your deck. Like, that should be what you can achieve.
Yeah, you don't need to, like, so you only have probably 3 actions in your turn for most investigators. And if you're playing with 3 people, it means that there's 3 clues on 3 to 6 clues on most locations. And it's not expected you can get 6 clues every turn, but with your 3 actions, you're barely going to be getting 3 clues a turn. And that's not even counting the actions that you want to spend moving or playing other cards or dealing with other, like, random treacheries or whatever. So you definitely need some way you need to play cards in your deck to make up that disparity. Like we mentioned, Rex Murphy has it printed on his card. Wendy Adams has access to cards such as Newspaper and Look What I Found and Winging It that can get her extra clues. And Luke Robinson here, he gets to eliminate some of those movement actions with his gate box. Those issues with dealing with monsters or moving around. He gets extra actions to investigate. He also has access to mystic cards such as Clairvoyance and Rite of Seeking to pick up extra clues per action.
Yeah. Sick. All right. Let's go on into the Generalist. So this role is the flex spot, as we said. So you should be looking to contribute investigator clues and damage as needed. So this is not like in the sense where in terms of like the clue specialist with the clues where you need to get like this a turn. But say, for example, the agenda needs 3 clues per investigator to advance. The act needs 3 clues per investigator to advance. You, as the Generalist, should have 3 clues by the time it advances. Like, that is kind of your goal. In addition, when monsters show up, your job is to help with the smaller ones that are needed. So your enemy specialist can go kill the 5 health minion while you say, don't worry, I'm going to go kill this 1 health acolyte or this 2 health ghoul. It's not a problem. As a Generalist, you're going to be needing to adapt to the game because your turns aren't as simple as the enemy specialist or the clue specialist, which is just kill enemies or get clues. You're like, where am I going to be more useful? There's a lot of Generalists, and I think most investigators can be built as a Generalist because it's also like when your construction of your deck. A Generalist is less decided by your investigator, except for in cases like Jenny Barnes and Skids O'Toole, where you're not really good at anything. And it's more about like how you construct your deck. Because like if you look at Akachi, she has a very similar stat line to Agnes, but she's not as good of a damage dealer as Agnes is for dealing monsters. And you could, but like you won't have as much success with her. I think Ashcan Pete and Duke the dog is probably the perfect example of a Generalist because Duke can do either thing just good enough, right? And as I said earlier, with a Generalist, you're not really like great at anything, but you're just good at what you need to do in the time that you need to do it. Anything you guys want to add?
Yeah. In general, you're probably gonna want to lean one way or the other towards getting clues or fighting monsters to be a little bit better at them, as mentioned before. With specialization is generally stronger. Um, and for the most part, you're probably going to. It's usually better to lean into getting clues over fighting monsters, because there aren't always monsters to fight, but there's always going to be clues to get. If the game runs out of clues, chances are the scenario is over or nearly over.
I will say I disagree with that slightly at 3 to 4 players. I feel like a generalist is better for damage at 3 to 4 players. But otherwise, at 2 I agree.
It depends on what the rest of your team comp looks like.
Yeah,
right?
that definitely is a part of it. But I agree with this the sentiment that having more of a focus is better. You don't want to be 50-50, because then you're like, all right, I've done it.
Yeah, I think you generally want your ability to gain clues to be much more of like a passive thing. Like, for example, with Ash Can't Pete, maybe I want to spend my off-class slots on like magnifying glasses, because then I'm just always kind of good at getting clues.
Yeah.
But my damage effects can be things like Overpower and Vicious Blow, because I'm probably not going to need them as consistently. But when I need them, I'm going to need them to be good.
Yeah.
Yep, similar thing with like Akachi on this page, where you could rely more on things like clairvoyance and ray of seeking for your clues, and then for like fighting, you could look at cards like Spectral Razor, just big one-shot effects that get what needs to be done done.
Yeah, like it's better to have your combat effects be the big flashy ones, and your clue effects be like the less flashy grindy ones. Than it is vice versa.
Yeah.
Because, same thing for Jenny. Oh, sorry, finish.
Sorry, like Travis said, when a monster shows up, you kind of want to solve it that turn. But the clues will be there next turn.
Yeah, if you're playing something like Jenny, you could like have lockpicks be, because you can use them every turn. Getting a clue every turn definitely isn't bad.
Yeah.
And then for dealing with monsters, you're looking at stuff more like Slip Away and Backstab.
Definitely.
And that covers all 3 of the investigators on this page.
Sick. Let's go to the support. So the support, as I said earlier, this role enables other investigators to do more than their share, but you're still going to want to be looking at contributing investigator clues / damage when needed. I think with this window, to go kind of contrary to what my 2 fellow hosts have said, I feel like with the support, this group leans more towards, when you're focusing something, you're going to be focusing more on clues than damage, just by the nature of, look at the stat lines of these 3 support cards. Investigators we have here.
Okay.
But still, it's like a generalist, where your deck's going to kind of like not be focused on one thing completely, but you're going to want to have something that you do better than others. The support class, you kind of see it in the character card. All these examples here from their abilities show Carolyn heals, Minty Fan helps on tests, Gloria Goldberg is insanely good at 2 players at making sure that everyone gets what they need to get. So you can kind of see there how they support the game and make it generally just easier for other people to not die or succeed.
Yeah, important thing to note about the support characters is if you really lean into so you're playing a support character, you're committing, like, just for easy numbers, half your deck to supporting your teammates, half your deck to getting clues, because you're playing one of these 3. That means that, like, you're kind of already down half of a person of whatever you're doing, whether it's clues or dealing with monsters. So what you're supporting them with needs to enable your teammates to make up at least that half a person, if not more. Because if you're not making up more, then it's kind of like, why aren't you playing something other than a support?
Yeah.
Right?
And on this note, with these characters, like especially Carolyn, especially Min, especially Gloria, they can be built as clue specialists. Because as we're about to get to the next slide, which I think I'll go on to, because it kind of helps share this point. The team compositions is a big part of this. And when you're playing 2 players, you can't really be like, here is my enemy specialist, and here is my support. It just, like, you're going to lose pace on the game because of that, right? So, like, just because we're saying Min is a support doesn't mean you can't play her as a clue specialist. She's a seeker. Of course she's going to be able to get clues, right? This obviously
like every character that, well, we're grouping them kind of as like what they're stereotypically best at, but not every character, but most characters can do kind of anything.
Yeah.
The card pool is big enough that like you can build your deck however you want, but these are like you look at Agnes Baker and you're like, extra damage to monsters. Yeah, she fights monsters, easy.
Yeah, this is kind of like the paint by numbers for team composition video. So to not overwhelm you, like, this is not like... ultimately, in Arkham Horror, the card game, you can let your dreams be, like, you can let your dreams become reality. But, like, right now we're saying, like, hey, with Mark Harrigan, you shouldn't try to do some weird support build. Just focus on killing monsters right now.
Yeah.
So as you can see here... Oh, sorry, was someone saying something? No.
So you could play, like, if you're playing, an enemy focus specialist and like a support who's not as amazing at getting clues, the enemy specialist could play cards like evidence or scene of the crime in his deck to help iron out that part of the game.
So some team compositions in 2 players. The obvious ones are 2 generalists, or the recommended one, which is 1 enemy specialist and 1 clue specialist. If you come in with an enemy and clue specialist in a 2-player game, like, you're gonna have a pretty good time with that. Like, that's because you draw 2 cards a turn, and yeah, sometimes you'll draw 2 enemies, but they're 2 small enemies, and your enemy specialist is like, worry not, friend, I will kill them, right? And the clue specialist says, worry not, I got 4 clues this turn, we're golden, right? So that's a pretty obvious and recommended composition for 2 players. 3 players. The first one is the one we play most often, which is 1 enemy, 1 clue, and then 1 generalist, or that generalist could be a support. You also could do 2 generalists and 1 support, or if you're feeling a bit frisky, you could do 3 generalists. Once again, as Travis said earlier, having focus in especially higher player counts is better, to the point that the 1 enemy, 1 clue, and the 1 generalist or support is the recommended build for 3 players, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is always better to play cards in your deck that make you good at the thing you're good at than it is to play cards that make you okay at the thing that you're bad at.
Yeah. We then go to 4 players, which is 1 enemy specialist, 1 clue specialist, and 2 generalists or supports. You could do also 1 of each if you're... you just want to get everyone feeling like they have their role that's just them. However, that said, the recommended, I still will stand by it. I think it's 2 enemy specialists and 2 clue specialists, because then, like, nothing is scary at that point. Like, yeah, there's moments where the game will get ahead of you, but, like, being prepared for 2 people prepared for enemies... That way, if like one of them is slipped up and they can't get there, the other enemy specialist could fill that gap, and the one who's falling behind can deal with enemies. Likewise, with the clue specialist, they can split up, and you can actually have 2 groups of 2 roaming the map together, which sounds like a really cool time. Any thoughts you guys want to add to team compositions, or should we move on to more investigators for each role?
I'm good to move on.
Sick.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So we're not going to break these guys down all in big detail, because there's a lot. But this is some list that...
names.
Sorry, Travis?
So just a big fat list of names.
Yeah, we have 4 slides that are just big lists of names. Travis kind of just chunked everyone into a role that he thought was good for them, and honestly, he nailed it. Not that
it's the one I thought was the obvious one.
Yeah. Like, for example, like... Silas Marsh, you could build him as a generalist and just focus on his skills and have him be that kind of flex spot, but if you just look at his card, 4 fist, let's start killing enemies, right? It's same with Rita Young, right? Like, she could be a great flex, but she deals damage by evading enemies, and then she can just finish them off in other ways. Just having her focus building around enemies is going to be more consistent for her.
Nathaniel Cho can never be anything else.
Yeah, Nathaniel Cho is kind of lumped into his enemy specialist. I do think
he can actually. I think he can actually like make a pretty decent generalist where you play a bunch of the. So you play like handcuffs to drag an enemy around with you, and then you play like scene of the crime and evidence and Gret Wagner and.
Well, Travis, you've just you have figured out our live deck build video we're gonna do today for sure.
Oh no.
But yeah, so we'll go on to now the clue specialists. These are some guys here that are just that we think are great clue specialists. Yeah.
Look at all the yellow.
Yeah, yellow. It's honestly blue and yellow is pretty. They're kind of like their things, while the other classes can go into the generalist and support a lot easier than these guys can.
Yep.
Of note, with everyone except for Amanda Sharp, but she's special, they all have a high book score. Like, that's something that you can notice here as well. So when you're looking at, like, what should I do as this investigator, the stats don't lie except for purple investigators. Their stats lie. But you can kind of see here, the 4-book kind of shows what box they should go in. All right. Look at this list. It's huge.
Yeah, this is like the other guys.
Yeah, this is the other guys. You might be asking, why is Joe Diamond here when he has 4-book and 4-fist? Well, congratulations. You answered your own question. He's a great flex because he can grab clues when he needs it or kill when he needs to. Like, that's a wonderful generalist. I think like Duke, Ashcan Pete, he is a very good example of a generalist sort of investigator that very easily falls into that role.
Let's be real, Duke's the investigator. Pete's just along for the ride.
Yeah, well, in Travis's notes,
really
he has Ashcan Pete written as Duke for all of these. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we call him.
That's what we call him. Of note, Jacqueline Fine, while here as a generalist, she also makes a dang good support. So, like, this is kind of like goes to the point that none of these guys are actually in these boxes permanently, except for apparently not Nathaniel Cho. They can kind of fit the roles as you want to and as you want to build for them. We're just once again recommending for the easiest things for when you're just starting out. Let's hop on over to the supports. The supports, which is becoming my personal kind of favorite archetype to play the role. I like it a lot. Being able to contribute to the game while also keeping your friends safe is like a weird mama bird feeling that I really like. Mandy Thompson's here. She's great at whatever she wants to do. So
yeah, Mandy is also the best generalist, the best kluger, and the best enemy specialist in the game.
The enemy specialist one will require a bit more knowledge before you try to make killer Mandy, but I'll tell you one thing, it's possible.
It can be done.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe she's not the best at it, but she's pretty good.
Yeah, she's functional.
Yeah.
For how they fit into supports like Mandy and Daisy, because you might be thinking, well, they have 5 in books. Yeah, they're great at grabbing the clues as needed. They can be definitely built as clue specialists, but their abilities also allow them to be very good supports, like Daisy Walker with an old book of lore to help other people at her location find cards is very juicy.
Yeah, that big book score is actually that she and Daisy and Gory's got 4, but like a 5 in brain. Mm-hmm. It's really nice to have that high book because you don't have to invest as many cards into being able to pick up those clues on your off actions. You can invest more of your cards into actually helping your teammates. Yeah,
and like on that note as well, like especially with these two, but also Gloria, just you see a location with 2 shroud and you tell your kluver, don't worry, I got these clues, right? And like as the support, you're also kind of like there's confidence that you can deal with your own problems as they show up. And I mean, like Gloria with a sword cane is like, you can't beat that grandma. She's tough.
Man, I think that sword cane might be one of my favorite cards.
This
is not the place to talk about that, I suppose.
But
I could gush for a while.
We'll find a place to talk about that for sure. Those are the investigator roles. Hopefully this has helped you better understand the roles and team compositions in the game of Arkham Horror. If you have any questions, let us know in the comments. Travis and I do read them and we will answer. And if there's any other subjects that you want to see us talk about in this Understanding Arkham Horror series, please don't hesitate to let us know. Travis, is there anything else you want to say before I close out the video, or are we good?
I think we're done.
All right, we're done. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one. See you all very soon for some more Arkham Horror content. As always, thanks for watching, and GG's.